Parents of Reddit, what are your I looked away for 1 second stories? I'm pretty sure I fit the bill for this one, but as a kid, not as the parent. My dad was watching myself and my 2 cousins play SNES down in our den, and got up to pee. Somehow, in the 2 to 5 minutes he was gone, we'd gotten one of my cousins on the treadmill, and got it angled into a downhill descent, pretty sure, we're the reason treadmills no longer have these, and jerked the dial all the way to max speed. My dad came in just in time to watch my cousin and I launch our other cousin 4 feet through the air into the wall. No worries, nothing broken, but trying to explain why my cousin had a big pump knot on her head got my dad in a lot of trouble. My son was 3. We were leaving Target. He left my sight as I was adjusting my bags. Maybe 2 seconds, tops. Poof. He was gone. I try to act cool, but my true crime podcast obsession got the best of me. The store locks down. We are all looking for him. People are checking cars outside. I'm calling my son's name louder than any intercom system. We were just about to call police. And then my toddler slides out of the cart area and acts like, "Sup?" He decided it would be a most excellent idea to shimmy underneath the carts and sit there as the world turns inside out searching for him. I hugged him and yelled at him for a good 10 minutes, ugly sobbing. 100's grateful for my Target folks. We catered lunch for them as a huge thank you and sorry my kid is in butthole. You are so kind for catering lunch. Our firstborn was about 18 months. Walking but not that agile. I was downstairs on the computer, wife yelled down she was using the bathroom and for me to watch him. We misunderstood each other so he was alone for about 3 minutes. She comes out asking where she is and he is nowhere to be found in the house. Thinking he's just hiding we start a full search only to notice the back patio door is slightly open after a few minutes hunting. Growing concern at this point but figuring he just snuck out back. A full search of the fenced/gated yard shows nothing. Now the heartbeat is going. Start running out and down the street. Find him 2 blocks down. He was heading to the park which would have required crossing 2 roads, one of which was a busy one. Nice neighbors found him and were walking him home as they'd recognized us from previous walks. Years later the little neighbor girl would remind us how he saved his life. Needless to say, child locks went on all the doors in the house after that. Yo, same thing happened to me laughing my butt off when I was 3. My grandpa was watching me while my grandma and mom went out. I somehow managed to get into the garage and open the garage door and walk like 7 blocks to the nearest park in like 5 minutes while my grandpa was in the washroom. They ended up calling the police to look for me because they had no idea where I went after searching for a while and I got to drive in a police car which was cool. Went to the toilet, leaving the newborn asleep on a blanket on the floor, on top of a large fluffy carpet. 3-year-old was watching TV nearby. Came back to find baby literally rolled up in carpet like a dead body, 3-year-old sitting on top, with a cushion under him too. Still don't know how he did it at all, let alone so quickly, and how the baby was totally chilled and unharmed. When my youngest was born, my 3rd child had just turned 2. Our pediatrician looked at me very sternly and said, "Never ever leave them alone together, even for a second. They will drop a baby to see if they bounce, they will smother them trying to wrap them up like a doll. Never leave them alone." I'm glad he told me that because she totally would have done something nuts. I'm currently 1 to 2 weeks, if not days away from the birth of my son, and my daughter turns 2 on the 4th. Thank you for this warning, I am too trusting with her because she's generally gentle. Mine are 2 and 11 months, and while we are gentle over here, too, sometimes toddler just gets a random urge, I guess? And will throw a hard toy at the baby's head or just smack the crap out of her like banging her head like a drum. They can't be trusted, but my baby is a champ because no one makes her smile like her sister. Those random urges don't go away when they age out of toddlerhood. I broke my arm when I was 11, and it was too high up my arm to get a cast, so it was in a sling for 2 months. About a week after the break, my then 9-year-old sister had an urge like that and threw a tennis ball right at the break to see what I would do. The answer was scream and cry, obviously. At a retail job ages ago, a girl had just broken her tailbone and was just going into the break room carrying her little donut cushion. Boy cashier thought it would be hilarious to kick her in the butt. So, yeah, the random "what does this do? Will it hurt?" Urges don't even go away among adults. Wow, that's really effed up. I've broken mine and it is no joke. I was riding the bus. It wasn't a public bus, but a semi-private one. Your company, school or yourself had to pay a yearly fee if you wanted to ride it, and most companies in the area did so their staff and families could ride it, to work as I normally do. A mom with 3 kids got on I hadn't seen before. The youngest was in a carriage. The other 2 were walking, mostly. The mother either was on her phone or preoccupied with the one that seemed to be the middle kid. The oldest spent part of the trip trying to wrap her scarf. She had it on the carriage, around the youngest kid's neck. Fortunately, it was also looped around the part that held the canopy. Early on, the mother noticed once, told the kid to stop, then was preoccupied. The kid kept trying. At one point, he got the little kid pushed up against the part that held the canopy and this other lady let the mom know, who loosened it a bit, told the kid off, and then went back to ignoring them, instead of removing it or anything. The kid looks at the lady who shakes her head no, then went right back to trying to kill their baby brother. I was about to intervene, and I think that lady was too, as the kid had tugged it tightly again, when their stop came up. I was so certain I was going to have to stop a child from being murdered by his brother. I hope that kid lived. Woke up once and my 2 sons had climbed out of a window onto a flat roof. They were 1 and 3. I still don't know how they even got the window open. Convinced my triplet siblings at 3 years old to climb up the ladder onto the flat roof while Dad ran inside to grab the water he'd prepared for us before going outside. I was making dinner for my twin 18-mo when boy twin starts to fuss, so I carefully put the knife about a foot away from the edge of the counter. I intentionally put it away from the edge because my girl twin is not to be trusted. I go change my boy and turn around and my girl is casually holding my large, sharp chopping knife. I had to get it from her like a hostage negotiator so she wouldn't run away with it. I couldn't figure out how she got it, so I looked at the video and as soon as my back was turned, she was grabbing the cutting board to pull the knife closer and then immediately skipped over the carrots and peeler to grab the knife. I was clearly correct in not trusting that feral child. That moment when they've got something dangerous and your instinct is to close the distance but you can't because then they're going to run with it. Effing stressful as F. What do you have? Web link. This is my kid in a few years, person facepalming, female sign. Husband reading a sign about watching your children on the trail at Gooseberry Falls in MN. Looks up to see middle child heading to the edge of trail. People fall every year. Some die. I was further down the trail with the youngest. He kept a firm grip on her for the rest of the walk. We moved into our new house on Halloween in 2001. Most of the heavy lifting was done, so the wife decided to begin unpacking the important stuff and I would take our 8-year-old daughter out trick-or-treating. We stepped outside and I realized I'd left my phone. Standing on the front porch, I tell her, "Don't move, I have to get my phone. I'll be right back. Do not move." Narrator, she moved. New neighborhood. Kids and parents everywhere. I'm running up and down the street frantically and after about 15 minutes later, I spot a family, mom and dad and a handful of rugrats, with mine in tow. They had a good laugh telling me they just turned around and there she was, having appeared out of nowhere. Decided to stay close assuming some hysterical parent would eventually come running. Edited to thank the kind awarding folks. You got to really wonder what's going on in a kid's brain to interpret "don't move" as wander off with this whole ass family you've never met before. It was candy, pure and simple. They don't think. Like, at all. Kids just do and don't think. Not me but my wife. Our 2 younger kids are 14 months apart. When our daughter was around 3 and our son was 2, my wife went into the garage to grab a frozen pizza out of the deep freezer and one of the kids, not sure which one, shut the door and locked my wife in the garage. She was banging on the door and could hear the little boogers in there laughing at her. My wife was not amused. She got a flathead screwdriver from my toolbox and managed to unlock the door. This all took 15 minutes or so. When she got in the house they were in their room watching cartoons and eating cookies they managed to steal. They would have left her out there all night. It's funny now 10 years later but my wife was scared crapless. We have kept a spare key hidden in the garage ever since. One of my uncles locked Grandma out of the house once when he was a toddler. She heard him singing, "Flour, sugar, coffee, for, sugar, coffee, flour, sugar." Sure enough, when she got back in, there was a pile on the floor of flour, sugar, and coffee that he'd scooped out a spoonful at a time. She said it was worth cleaning up the mess, that she knew exactly what he was up to the whole time she was outside. This reminded me of when my twins were little. I was in the kitchen making dinner. One of the boys was with me in his little wheelie walker thingy. We had the coffee canister and creamer on a cart. My kid, for seemingly no reason, made a wide arm sweep through everything on the cart. Coffee grounds everywhere, so he naturally started rapidly wheeling through it all. It was hilarious and also a pain in the butt to clean. Lol. My little sister locked me out of the house when I took the garbage out. Had to go round back to the deck sliding door because she said she didn't know how to unlock the front door. She was maybe 4 or 5. When I was 4 or 5, my room had a lock on it that, to use, you had to push the knob in and twist it to the side. You know, like those child-proof medicine bottles. Safe to say one day I accidentally locked myself in my room and then the child-proof lock stopped me from opening it. When I can't open my child-proof bottles, I give them to my 4-year-old grandson. He'd been able to open them for nearly 2 years now. So we had to really hammer home about taking anything without asking first. Of course, he's always supervised for that, but one never knows. He's a quick learner. Not sure why, but in the house we lived in Tennessee, one of the bedrooms had the lock on the door on the wrong side, so you could lock someone in the room. I came home from work one day to find my wife and 3 kids locked in the room because my son had locked the door from the outside, then went in and shut it. My daughter was 18 months old. Standing in between my husband and me in the kitchen, arm distance from both of us. She slipped, fell, and broke 2 front teeth. The first kid is for practice. That's why my big sis has more scars than me. As the older sibling, I can confirm. Several scars and front teeth broken out, but the ones that stay. God, I wish more parents admitted to crap like this happening. I'm an early childhood teacher and crap like this be happening at home while at the center a kid intentionally runs smack into a wall for no reason and gets a tiny wee bruise and parents want to get the cops involved. I would 100% believe you that my child ran into a wall. That would not even be questioned in my head. My 2-year-old runs into walls in our house all the damn time. I can't tell you how many times I say, watch where you're walking in a day. It's ridiculous. He gets distracted and doesn't look at where he's going and ends up running into a wall, door frame, fridge, table, etc. Edit. Since I've gotten a few concerning comments, I do want to add some info. He is our second kiddo, so not our first rodeo. We have noticed that he does it more than our daughter did. So, last week at his 2.5-year appointment I brought it up to the pediatrician. They checked his eyesight and he did well. They are not concerned as of right now. My husband has ADHD and so does my mom. So, with how much he does get distracted and has some focus issues while doing everyday things, we are keeping that in mind. But also, he's 2. He's not expected to focus for more than 2 minutes on anything right now. Thank you for your concerns. It is a good thing to keep on our radar and we will continue to do so. I had a child in my care walk into a wall last week and when I asked what happened, they responded, I forgot to look where I was going. My oldest did this at 20 months. Except she broke 1 tooth. The dentist didn't want to believe my story and kept trying to get me to change it. I was terrified he was going to call CPS on me for a frickin' accident. 2 years later, she fell at my feet and broke an arm. I joked that she was safer unsupervised. I had been drinking scotch one evening while doing dishes. So I'm standing at the sink. I hear my 3-year-old stumble into the room, pull a chair out from the table, and climb up. I'm not thinking anything of this until I hear a small voice say juice. As I turn to watch him dump about half an ounce of single malt into his mouth. This was immediately followed by a gasp, then he turned bright white, then bright red. He went to bed early that night. What do you do with a drunken toddler? What do you do with a drunken toddler? What do you do with a drunken toddler midway through the evening? Tuck him into bed for the nighty, tuck him into bed for the nighty, tuck him into bed for the nighty, midway in the evening. Way hey and up he chucks it, way hey and up he chucks it, way hey and up he chucks it, on the effing carpet. Oh crap, the kid's hungover, oh crap, the kid's hungover, oh crap, the kid's hungover. Guess we'll just skip grandma's. What do you do with a drunken toddler? What do you do with a drunken toddler? What do you do with a drunken toddler? Midway in the evening. My favorite are /Redditings by far, Reddit link. My sister was 4 when she had her first root beer float. One of the dads in the group left a bottle of beer in the kitchen, which inadvertently got mixed into my sister's root beer. Bottles looked similar. Her immediate response was, "I don't like this," promptly followed by everyone telling her root beer floats were great and to keep trying it. She quit a third of the way down the tall glass, after which my mom came over to taste it and show her how great root beer floats were. Mom screamed, "This is beer." My sister couldn't walk straight and had to be carried upstairs to bed. Peer pressure to drink started early for her. My sister got roaring drunk at the family dinner table on her birthday. Italian family in the late 70s, so the kids would have a half glass of wine with dinner on special occasions. Anyways, the conversation got heated as the family started in on how older sister is a failure, me, and no one was paying attention to her. She had helped herself to quite a bit of the wine before someone noticed. She had just turned 8. Same family couple years, and I am drinking the spiked punch on Christmas Eve with permission. They laughed hysterically as I bounced off the walls to bed. Told me I needed to learn how to handle my booze better or I would never be able to catch a man. I was 12. When I was about 12, I was at a neighborhood Christmas party. There was eggnog, which I was unaware often has brandy in it. I drank several glasses, spent the rest of the evening stupidly drunk, and ended the night vomiting in the bathroom. My parents, quite drunk themselves, somehow didn't notice at all. The experience definitely deterred me from drinking, at least for a couple years. Damn it, not the art bag, you're not ready for that one yet. I told you to start on the space side. Little Jimmy, age 3. Alcoholic. Hi, Jimmy. I glanced at the salt, and toddler daughter grabbed a whole new potato off my plate and shoved it in her mouth. She then tried to swallow it and choked. Longest 15 seconds on my life getting it out of her. Learn child first 8 people. They are suicide machines as toddlers. Edit. Thanks for the awards, kind strangers. I'm only 4 years into this parenting gig, but so far, it seems like the #1 job responsibility is stop child from intentionally dying. That's pretty much all you do until they are about 8 or 9. She made it to 18 last week. I do wonder sometimes how? My mother has no clue that at the ripe old age of 14 I was nearly hit by a train, and would have definitely died on impact. I think about it a lot and how the news probably would have killed her, sending her straight to the afterlife to whoop my ass. When my daughter was little, probably about 3, she went with me to shop for some tools. I turned away to look at something and heard behind me, "Daddy, what's this?" Honey, that's an axe. Please give it to me." She did, and all was well, but I'm glad my wife wasn't there, she would have panicked. That moment when you see your kid holding something sharp and or dangerous and you have to stay super calm so they don't make any sudden movements. Turning around and seeing a toddler holding a steak knife, you might as well be face to face with a bear. Reminds me of my favorite story from my stint in preschool, as a teacher. A kiddo comes up to me with a band-aid on his index finger and sadly tells me he has a boo-boo. I started to say something like, "Aw, honey, I'm sorry." But my lead teacher was behind him and interrupted and said, "Yeah, tell her how you got the boo-boo." Kid breaks out in a huge crap-eating grin and proudly says, "I'm not ready for steak knives." That reminds me of my brother. When we were toddlers, he got his hands on a butcher knife and deeply cut his finger when my mom had her back turned. On the way home from the ER while my mom was driving, my brother and I managed to get all the bandages off. So she had to turn us back around and get laughed at by the ER staff, who used a lot more tape and layers of bandages to attempt to double toddler-proof it. At least the bear is more predictable. I've never seen a child with 2 panicky parents. There's always at least one stone-faced problem solver while the other blathers helplessly from the side. God help any kids without calm parents. I have always been worried about becoming a helicopter parent. I'm naturally a worrier, but it turns out I'm the calm one when stuff hits the fan. Step-kid got glow stick liquid to the eye while camping. Grab water, begin flushing, calling poison control, but her dad was kind of stuck in a loop of what do we do. Pretty proud of how I handled it. I have anxiety and also a chronic worrier. I also work in the medical field. I'm the calm one when it comes to crap show situations. I always get asked, how do you stay so calm? No cap on just freaking out quietly. Exactly, it is hard to explain. I think it is because we have practice at worrying, knows what it feels like, and have had to push it aside to get anything done. So we took the kids, 7, 3, 3 and 3, to a water park. One of us would stay in the kiddie area with 2 of the triplets and the other parent would take one of the 3-year-olds and the 7-year-old on a ride. It was working pretty well. Note, the kiddie area was mostly contained, but there was no gate or anything. At one of the swaps, we blinked for a second and our adventurous 3-year-old was gone. Instant OF panic. Get security there, staff is looking, I'm running around looking. Anyway, we eventually found him. He had ridden a water slide with my wife earlier, and decided that was fun. I'm going to do it again. The 3-year-old had gone back to get in line for the water slide by himself, and they found him about 2 from the front of the line. At least you didn't have to describe him to security, just point at another one. We're looking for a child that looks just like this one. Ma'am, you mean the one right next to you? Oh no, there's a third. Keep it simple, there are less of these than there should be. This is getting out of hand. Now there are 3 of them. Biggest question, did he get to have his turn? I had this happen with my kids, 18 months and 4 years old. We were in the kiddie area, which was gated up, while my wife was checking out of the hotel that was attached to the water park. I was standing right next to the baby, and kept swiveling my head back and forth between the 2 kids. I turned back to check out the older kid, and he was gone. I pick up the baby and start looking, because it turns out that most blonde-haired white kids in swim trunks look very similar. I realize he's gone about the same time that my wife gets back. We grab an employee, who immediately gets on their walkie-talkie to report a lost toddler. Within seconds, we hear a lifeguard doing a short burst of whistles. My 4-year-old had wandered into the entrance for the lazy river, but another guest, seeing an unattended child with no tube, stopped him and got a lifeguard's attention. When I asked him what he was thinking, he told me that he'd said that he was going to the lazy river, and I didn't tell him no. I never heard him ask, and am still irate at whatever adult had either opened the gate for him or didn't close it behind them, because he physically couldn't have done it himself. I got left behind at a bowling alley once because both my parents thought they had me. I had asked my mom to go pretend to play the arcade games and I guess thought she said yes. Pretend to play the arcade games. I'm glad I'm not the only one who did this, laughing my butt off. My parents would never give me money for games. My elementary school teacher told me we could go back to some wind chime in a park we visited before leaving. Apparently, there wasn't any time left and the teachers herded us to the bus. I was promised I could watch the wind chime, though, so I stayed in front of it. They lost me, but luckily, they had pinned one teacher's phone number onto every kid's jacket, so some lady called them when she saw I was lost. My toddler at the time grabbed a stick of butter out of the fridge and tossed it into the fish tank. Minutes later all the fish were floating dead in the fish tank. Last time we owned fish. I'm a former aquarium hobbyist with a fish-obsessed toddler. I will not get her a fish tank until she stops dropping every available object into her dad's coffee cup. So far the worst has been having to leave the remotes out to dry for a few days. A fish tank could be so much worse. My dad had a 65-gallon tank when I was a kid. I didn't drop anything into it, well, except for myself when I just decided to take a swim in it one day. We did not have a fish tank for long after that. My daughter and my niece decided to feed my fish once without asking. They poured every single morsel of fish food I owned into their huge tub of flakes, even huger bag of pellets, dried bloodworms. It was anarchy. Caught it early enough that the fish didn't die, they must have just thought they were in heaven. But what a pain in the butt to clean. Till fish hate butter. I'm not the parent in this scenario, but I'll share the story anyway. I was in college, and had a club meeting. Some of the people involved were non-traditional students with a toddler, and they had the kid there at the time. Okay, no big deal, he was pretty much entertaining himself. The parents were trying to pay attention to what was going on, much like the rest of us, when this one guy jumps out of his chair with a yell and grabs the kid. Turns out the kid had been playing with his dad's keys and was headed for the electrical outlet with them. Do electrical outlets talk to kids? Because kids are always drawn to them as if the outlets are saying, "Come here." I mean, you give them toys where you put shaped blocks into the holes that match. They see an outlet with a slit and hold an object that might fit, so they have to try just like the toys they played with. Ah, that's a great way of seeing it. Didn't think about that. You're right. Also, they are basically the only thing in a room that is at toddler height. And they look like. I had taken my 4-year daughter into a public toilet in France, which was next to a main road. As we left, I let go of her hand for a split second as I looked away to close the door behind us. When I looked back, she was running into the main road as she'd seen her mum on the other side. From where I stood, my view of the road was obstructed, so I couldn't see if any cars were coming, and she had gone too far for me to catch her. By a complete miracle, she got safely over the road. It sends shivers down my spine remembering the helpless terror I felt when I saw her in the middle of the road. My mother was standing by the side of the road with me, 8, and my brother, 5. She let go of my brother's hand for just 1 second while she searched in her handbag for the keys to unlock the car. My brother raced into the road in front of a car. I can't remember if it was my mother or if I grabbed him. This was nearly 20 years ago, now, but luckily one of us hauled him back so he didn't actually get hit. My mother was so shaken after that I don't think she let go of my brother's hand near roads until he was in his early teens, which went over so well with a boy his age. She's been joking ever since that he's not allowed to cross the road by himself until he's 30. Having 2 young kids is such a juggling act. I was leaving the store with my 3-year-old holding my hand and my infant in a baby carrier on my chest. 3-year-old pulls away and starts to run, and my reaction to lean down and grab her before she could get into the street almost dumped the baby out of the sling onto his head. Once I had my daughter by the hand again, I sat on the curb and cried. They were both fine, but I was wrecked. I actually tripped while wearing my then infant son and almost cracked his skull open on the edge of a stone stair. I live in a very old city by American standards, so the sidewalks are very uneven in some parts of the city. I tore my knees up badly, but by some miracle managed to stop my momentum millimeters before his head got smashed. I literally sat down in the middle of the sidewalk and bawled while my son looked at me baffled. He had no idea how close he came to being seriously injured that day, and it chills me just thinking about it. That's so scary. I work in childcare and for a long time worked in an infant-only classroom. I know work with a mixed group of 0 to 3-year-olds. One time I was carrying a 6-week-old across the room to his crib and the rug slipped out from under me. I fell straight to the floor. There was another infant on the floor nearby, so I was trying to hold on to the 3-week-old with one hand, catch myself with the other, and not fall on the 6-month-old nearby. I have no idea how I did it, but I managed not to drop the baby, and the only injury was a bump on my head from hitting a shelf on my way down. I sobbed so hard that my boss had to come relieve me from the classroom for a few minutes. She saw what happened on the classroom cameras and came to check on us. Another time an infant crawled behind me. I should have expected it because he was always behind me, and I took a step backwards and stepped on his arm with my full weight. He was perfectly fine, not even a bruise, and didn't even cry, but I held him for easily 15 minutes sobbing because I'd hurt him. He just looked at me so confused for the entire time. This is why I didn't laugh when my best friend leashes her troublemaker 3-year-old child in public. He did this one too many times and she was just fine, band around our wrists it is then. I actually don't think it's bad either, reading this thread. Must be super scary. My mother used to put a leash on me when I was a toddler. I think I ran away from her one too many times in public. She told me people used to look at her like she was a monster. I liked to hide under clothes racks in stores, so my mom used to have to leash me as a toddler. She definitely got some mean comments. I was perfectly happy, so I don't get why other people felt it was their business to be upset about. My son did this when he was small. I was frantically looking and shouting for him when I hear him giggling his ass off in the middle of a circular clothes rack. I was the child in question, 2 years old at the time. We were at the beach, where about 2 feet into the sea there's a shelf where it suddenly gets twice as deep. My parents were distracted by my brother, so didn't notice me wander into the surf. When they next looked up, all they could see was my hat away floating on the water. Panic set in, and my dad sprinted into the sea. Discovered that I was still wearing the hat, and was somehow floating completely vertical with just the hat showing above the water. Edit. Turns out this is not that uncommon. Remember, when you're near a body of water, never stop watching the kids. Jesus? Perhaps a less buoyant Jesus. He's trying his best. Not a parent, but when I worked childcare I lost a child. We didn't have enough workers scheduled, just me and one other, for an event. The policies for the place were horrible, and for this event, we had to accept any kids that parents wanted to drop off. So we had about 20 kids, around 12 toddlers, 4 kids who were too old to be in the nursery, 4 to 6 years old, and 4 infants. Well, we should have been in the same room as we only had 2 workers, but we knew the toddlers would end up hurting the infants if we did that. So we split up. I had the 16 kids, the other worker had the 4 infants. One of the toddlers had to use the restroom, attached, he went on his own, and after he needed help buttoning his pants again. So I turned my back to the room, fixed his pants, directed him to the sink to wash his hands, and then turned back into the room. I immediately performed a head count, and realized I was off by 1. So I counted again. And again. Then I started frantically checking the closet, and mentally figured out whom I was missing. I was freaking out. Told the other worker and they're freaking out. We don't know where the kid is. Mentally I'm thinking I have to call the cops now and it's going to be a huge deal. The other worker calls the church's pastor, church event, and they call the child's parents. They had picked up their child. In the 10 seconds I had my back turned, the child's father had walked up to the half door, the child saw him and ran to the door, and he just picked them up and walked away. Didn't sign the sign-out sheet. Didn't see an adult. Didn't do anything but walk up and carry their kid away. We were absolutely pissed, and now that I'm older, I wouldn't work an event like that, or I'd turn away kids once we got to the point we couldn't take care of them. I wouldn't be in that situation again. C. The best way to approach feeding the starving is a little at a time. Tell her to try feeding bits next time, instead of jamming the whole sandwich in. The VCR needed milk. I get peanut butter stuck in my tape hole too. Hi, could you please select all the boxes that include cars in them? My sister baked some cookies to share at work, and when her 3-year-old daughter seen them on the plate on the counter, she asked for one. Instead of explaining she wasn't allowed to have one, my sister lied and said they were yucky, implying it was a bad batch. My sister, confident that her lie was successful, turned her back to finish cleaning up. She heard the plate being removed from the counter and turned around just in time to see the entire cookie slide off the plate into the garbage. Her daughter smiled and just said yucky. Is that what people call instant karma? I was round at my buddy's place. He had kids about 7 and 5. Both super nice kids, nice family. We were sitting in the garden with a beer. The eldest had a foam-covered baseball bat that he'd been hitting foam balls with. Out of nowhere, he calmly walks up behind his dad and takes a full home run swing at his head. Effing clobbers him. This bat is coated in foam, but it still would beneath it, so it's basically mid-level assault, maybe attempted murder. Dazed, the dad turns round to defend himself, at which point the 5-year-old sees his opportunity and grabs the beer from the table and starts chugging it. Not just drinking it, full-on frat boy chugging it out of nowhere. In the 3 seconds it takes me to recover from the shock and reach across the table to stop him, the kids drank about 2/3 RDS of the bottle. Not much for an adult, but a effing skinful for a kid weighing about 1 stone. Within about 3 seconds, we went from nice family barbecue to concussed adult, domestically abused by a psychopathic 7-year-old, and a wasted 5-year-old. Went real dark real quick. I catered a funeral about a decade ago. It was outside in the family's yard. At some point, we began to notice that one little girl, maybe 4 to 5, was walking from table to table and drinking from various cups. Little girl was trashed. She just starts having the best time. Running, screaming, spinning in circles. I assume you all know where this is going. She eventually turned into a fountain of vomit. My 4-year-old at the time, she just turned 17, grabbed a freshly made margarita I had just set down on the coffee table and chugged it. It was one of those pre-mixed margaritas that come in a jug at around 14% alcohol, but of course, I had added an extra shot or so of cheap tequila to the glass. I didn't know what the F to do with a drunk toddler, but I sure felt like a crappy dad. Generally, you give them a cigar and then put them down for a nap. Seriously, though, you're fine. My mom once accidentally let me eat a whole pack of cigarettes. Accidents happen. Edit: since this got so many upvotes, I should add that cigarettes are very dangerous, and if your kid eats one, call poison control. I ate half a book of matches when I was little. Mom went to grab a camera to take a cute picture of the baby next to the jack-o'-lanterns, came back, and took a picture because I had a funny look on my face. A split second after she got the picture, she realized why I had a funny look on my face, panicked, got me to spit out the rest of them, and immediately called poison control, who laughed and said I'd be fine. How does one accidentally eat a whole pack of cigarettes? This happened to me as a toddler too. My father was blind, and used to keep his cigarettes in his shirt pocket. When he leaned over to attend to me in the playpen, either they'd fall out, or I'd pickpocket him, and then I'd have a pack of cigarettes to play with, soft pack, so I didn't even have to figure out the flip-top thing. He wouldn't realize until the next time he went to light one, at which point it was way too late. It happened several times, until he finally stopped keeping them in his pocket. My father was also blind, though my drug of choice were all the readily available cigarette butts in the ashtrays. He'd have to call for my mom because he could hear me spluttering somewhere and not be able to find me. It's sort of amazing I made it through early childhood, to be honest. Step 1: be a dumb kid. That's it, that's all you need. At 4 years old, a friend of mine woke up from a nap and asked for a drink. Her mom told her to get the juice from the fridge. She drank about half a bottle of wine before anyone noticed the problem and was quite impressively vomity. She's 40 this year and she still doesn't drink. You might just have turned your daughter into a more responsible citizen. Honestly, sounds like the kids planned it. Maybe 5-year-old lost a game and had to do a dare. 7-year-old to 5-year-old, I dare you to drink dad's beer. 5-year-old, he won't let me, just take it. 7-year-old, I'll distract him, but you have to chug it fast before user black_sky_thinking can take it. 7-year-old and 5-year-old, ready, set, go. Reddit link. What happened to the 7-year-old? I'm surprised the kid kept chugging after tasting it. One time my dad was drinking a dark beer out of a glass and I asked him for a sip of his Pepsi. My father grinned and handed me the glass. I threw up and never asked for a sip again. Kid probably chugged it so fast he couldn't taste it. I can confirm that this happened to me when I was a kid. My dad had these Budweiser tall glasses and I always used them for my drinks. I filled mine with apple juice and just came in from running around outside. I picked one up and chugged it and only tasted it 2/3 of the way through, but it was disgusting to 7-year-old me, and that's only the second worst experience I've had with beer as a kid. Lol. I swear babies that can't even flip over yet can teleport short distances when no one is observing them. You put that thing down in one spot, turn your back on it for 1 second and then it's moved a few feet away. They can do this because they don't understand how it's impossible. When babies learn enough about physics and object permanence to be able to move and navigate, they lose the ability to teleport, because then they know enough to figure out it can't be done. Mine was so bad about this, though we knew from the start he was rolling. Literally had just been born, put in the clear plastic crib thing, and I just watched this newborn baby roll over to his stomach. Nurse comes in, doesn't believe me, and flips him and he rolls over again. Heard he shouldn't be able to do that about 50 times. The nurses kept scolding me at the hospital for not putting him on his back. He keeps rolling. I'm doing my best but I'm exhausted. I know what you mean. I'm so thankful my husband was there to help, because we literally could not put him down without him trying to roll onto the floor. One of us had to hold the kid the entire time. Was he born 4 months late? He was a few weeks late, Had to get evicted via induction, but not quite that late lol. And it was wild. He was so active right from the start, just constantly trying to move and kick. The videos I have of him are honestly bizarre because of how small he was compared to how he moved. Little gremlin wouldn't even let me hold him all that much the first few months unless he was tired because he wanted to be wiggly. What is he like now? Our 10-month-old literally never stops moving or exploring unless he's really sleepy. He's 3, almost 4, and still crazy active. Strong and big for his age, and honestly on energy alone more of a handful by himself than most multiples I've watched over the years. He's cuddlier now, but it's like holding a very wiggly hyperactive dog lol. Honestly, it's fun, but I'm glad he's my only. I could not handle the literally never-ending energy from more than one kid. Is he a famous athlete yet? Still only 3, but we get constant comments on how active he is, and he was doing push-ups with me at 1.5, so we'll see where it goes lol. According to all known laws of aviation, there is no way a baby should be able to fly. Its wings are too small to get its fat little body off the ground. The baby, of course, flies anyway because babies don't care what adults think is impossible. This reads like a Douglas Adams novel. Lol. My mom told me a story about me when I was 3 to 4 years old. She went to the kitchen for something and I got oddly quiet. Somehow, my super speed powers activated and I was all the way in the bathroom, climbed into the sink, and got my dad's razor. She walked in on me shaving my face. I looked like a baby vampire that discovered blood for the first time, face just gushing with blood. I'm smiling and giggling, and my mother was absolutely mortified. I'm in my mid-20s now and still have scars on my face from this. Edit, I am a girl so it's kind of funny to say that I got a scar from shaving my face. Not a parent but the kid in the story. I have 2 younger sisters. They are twins and only 12 months younger than I am. When I was 3 and they were 2, me and sister 1 put sister 2 in the washing machine while my mom went for a pee. She came back right in time because we were already playing with the buttons. Christ, that is terrifying and can happen so easily. The horrifying thing about this for me is that I have no idea how to open a washing machine once it started. And a good amount of them are installed under a unit where you can't quickly get to the plug and disconnect them. I think there's usually a reset button on washer. I have a rather inexpensive washer. The button I push to start also has the option that when held for 3 seconds will stop the load and unlock the lid. I was sitting in a high chair, climbed out of it, onto the counter, and stole my mother's coffee. All she did was to put her shoes at the door, 3 feet away. One thing I've learned from this thread: small children have the ability to teleport. I'll tell one on my mother's behalf. When I was 3 or so, we lived in an apartment with an arched set of monkey bars out back. A standard rule was that I shouldn't play on them when she wasn't around to supervise. Well, one day I was playing on them when the phone rang, so she ran inside to answer it, but not before ensuring that I'd gotten off the monkey bars and repeating her usual warning. One of the things she never allowed was for me to try and walk atop said monkey bars, and already being primed to play on them, I seized the opportunity. I'd made it to about the middle before I lost my balance, and fell through the bars, banging my head on them as I passed and then landing more or less head first onto hard, packed dirt. Had a stutter for years after that, and I suspect the process of getting over that is why I don't speak as if I grew up where I actually did. This was one of many, many times that I got hurt the instant I chose to disregard her warnings. Also included are the time I crushed my finger in a dumpster, the warning being to come and get her should I find the lid closed. My sister and I judged that she could toss it open and I could just time throwing the trash inside. We were mistaken. The time I was impaled on a tree, I was told to not climb cedar trees, especially the one that I climbed and then promptly slipped out of only to be helpfully caught by a branch through the groin on the way down, a number of bicycle wrecks and pseudo-fencing accidents, and, well, you get the idea. I feel very sorry for your mother. One of the things she never allowed was for me to try and walk atop said monkey bars. My brother did that when he was a kid. He slipped down between 2 bars but his head wasn't quite large enough to fit through the gap unimpeded. Jammed his upper teeth on one bar and the back of his head on the other, breaking his front teeth, and then fell through to the ground. Makes me shudder thinking about it. My daughter, 5 at the time, was very defiant. I was 4 weeks postpartum, dressed in sweatpants and a nursing tank. No shoes. She wouldn't get out of the car in the kiss and drop lane. I hopped out to open her door, not thinking about what would happen next. She locked the doors. Here I am, lactating, blocking the line, ready to either collapse in an emotional sobbing heap, or break the windows out of the car. This escalated to the entire parking lot being rerouted before my neighbor showed up with spare keys. When Dee Dee saw her with the keys, she hopped out of the other side, yelled, "Have a good day," as she ran into the school. Oh my, good luck. TLDR, infant son rolled off the couch, cracked his skull, and had to have brain surgery. I had just finished changing my 6-month-old son's diaper, with him lying on the couch, with the changing cloth underneath. I turned to throw the diaper in the trash right next to the couch, and in the 2 seconds I didn't have my hands on him, he rolled at the couch. He'd never even rolled over before. He hit the ottoman, which spun him back the other way, and he smacked his head on the hardwood floor. He cried, but calmed down after a few minutes. There was no sign of swelling, any blood, etc. We were worried about a possible concussion, so we kept a close eye on him the rest of the day. When it was time for us to go to bed, we decided to stay up and watch a movie instead, and I went in and checked on him partway through the movie while my, now ex-wife went to make some popcorn. I changed his diaper, and he woke up a little. One of his pupils was overdilated, and the side of his face had started to droop like he was having a stroke. We immediately grabbed our diaper bag, jumped in the car, and drove to the hospital, which fortunately was only 10 minutes away. I walked into the ER carrying my son and told the nurse that I thought he was having a stroke. She checked him, took us to a back room, and within minutes the room was swarming with medical personnel. A doctor informed us that it looked like our son had cracked his skull internally, and there was swelling in the brain. They would need to perform open cranial surgery immediately to relieve the pressure on the brain. The doctor told us that they weren't sure he would survive the surgery, but it was the best option. We were whisked into another room, separated, and asked questions about exactly how the injury had happened. They wanted to make sure it wasn't due to abuse, because they said that falling off the couch onto the floor shouldn't have had the force to crack an infant's skull. At this point, his mom and I were both sobbing, just trying to figure out what was going on, and whether our son was going to be okay. When they finally finished interviewing us, they brought us into a waiting room. I called my parents to tell them what was happening, and then another doctor came to tell us that the surgery had gone well, but that they'd had to remove around 2/3 of his brain tissue due to the blood saturation damage. He showed us an X-ray or MRI they had done just before actually beginning cutting that showed what looked like a crescent moon of gray matter clinging to the left edge of the interior of the skull, with the rest of the image filled by blackness, which the doctor told us was blood. He advised us that even if he survived the rest of the night, our son would likely never learn to walk or talk. When the surgery was done, they brought him to us. He was still groggy from the anesthesia, but other than being, very understandably, fussy, he seemed otherwise like his normal self. Of course, there was also a large incision wound, stitches, and tubes coming out of his head to drain off the excess fluid. It was around 2 a.m. at this point, but I called our religious leader, who I was also good friends with, to tell him about the situation. He came and prayed with us, and offered a blessing for our son, just that he would make it through the night. This story is already getting much longer than I want to type on a Reddit comment, but he survived the night. He survived the next week, and the next month, and every time the doctors saw him, they said it was a miracle that he was alive. He had mild seizures for a few months after the operation, and when he first started to crawl, he would sometimes just stop and freeze for a second or two for no apparent reason, but remarkably, the 1/3 of his brain matter that they left grew to fill the rest of his brain cavity. The blood vessels from the left side of his brain spread and grew all the way across to cover the right side where the original vessels had been destroyed. He learned to talk and walk within the regular time frames, and has had no noticeable residual effects of his traumatic injury. When we took him back to the hospital 6 months later for his final post-op checkup, every one of the nurses said it was a miracle that he was even alive, much less talking and moving around like a normal 1-year-old. Edit, added TLDR at the start. Went to pee, put my kiddos in their room with the door open and the gate up. I also had the bathroom door open, come out to find a dozen eggs cracked on the kitchen floor and into the butter and my youngest covered in peanut butter naked. My now ex-husband was sleeping. I walked into our room, woke him up and tagged out. My brain was fried at that point. To this day, I have no clue how they escaped. They are 16 and 18 now. My siblings did something like this when I was still too little to join in. We jokingly call it the Great Butter Incident of '99. My oldest sister was sitting on the counter in undies with a tub of margarine and a whisk, dipping the whisk, flinging the butter on the kitchen floor. My other two sisters were butter skating and getting that butter wherever their tiny fingers could get it. We didn't pass the military housing cleaning inspection when we left because my mom couldn't get all the butter out of there. My 18-month-old son was playing with his toy trains. I turned on my computer to play my new game Diablo. While it was loading, my son came up to me with what looked like chocolate on his hands. I said to myself, where did he get chocolate, and sniffed it. It wasn't chocolate. I turned around to see the most horrible sight of poop smeared over everything. It was a crap storm, Randy. The floors were the worst. We lived in an old farmhouse and the cracks between floorboards were like a centimeter wide and poop was pressed deep into them. I had to use a toothpick to scrape it out. I learned a lesson that day. That happened to me as a preteen babysitting. Let the second to youngest, about 3 to 4 years, use the potty by himself while I finished bathing his baby sister. It got quiet down at the other bathroom. Took baby and walked down the stairs and it was like a murder scene. But poop instead of blood. Bathroom toilet was reglazed in crap. Walls had a new feces wall treatment. I was horrified. They didn't pay me enough for this crap. I looked at him covered in poop in the bathroom. Grabbed him and knocked out of there. Got him a shower and was done as they came home. Showed the bathroom to equally horrified parents. I mean, they had me watching 4 kids at 12. WTF 90s. Not mine, but my mom's. She tells me this one all the time. I was 3 and my mom and I were at the mall doing some Christmas shopping. We were in a clothing store looking at some clothes. My mom looked away for 1 second and when she turned around, I was gone. Nowhere to be found in the store. Security was called in and it took I think 2 hours for them to find me. I kept going on to different stores, looking at stuff, then immediately leaving. Stores kept calling security to tell them where I was. I was really fast and slippery back then, so I was able to get away quickly. In the end, they eventually caught me and I was only gone to do my own Christmas shopping. According to my mom, she said these exact words after reuniting with me: "We're going to end up on the news." I was extremely fast and slippery when I was really younger. Not so much now. I can only run for so long before getting tired and exhausted. My toddler self, however, unlimited amounts of energy. Never doing that again. Obligatory, not a parent. I was watching my sister's kids and told them we would grill for dinner and have pie. I went to the bathroom, came back, and the pie was all over the living room. When I asked them what happened, they told me it was daylight savings time, so dinner was now. I couldn't help but laugh. Edit, back to back. Don't type before coffee, kids. This happened last year as we were in lockdown. My 2 children, 8 and 2, were jumping on the bed. I walked in, scolded them and they stopped. Not 2 steps out of me leaving the room, I hear the springs again, and the worst scream in the world. Evidently, eldest pushed youngest in excitement, a bit too hard, and youngest hit her eyebrow hard against the side cupboard. It was bloody anarchy. Rushed to the emergency room with screaming from baby the entire drive. And only one of us could go in. Ended up needing plastic surgery and lucky to have full eyesight with her crushed in skull. Another one speaking on behalf of my mom, since she'd never touch Reddit. I was around 7 I think. Definitely old enough to know better. We were at Walmart and I asked my mom if I could ride in the cart because I was tired. She said yeah, but hang on, so she could put her purse in the seat and get her list out. My dumb ass was too impatient to hang on, so I tried to climb in the cart myself while she was turned around grabbing some coupons. I flipped over the cart and fell headfirst inside of it, cracking my head open. I started bleeding everywhere. I don't even remember it hurting, I was just in shock because of how my mom was reacting. There was a Subway at the entrance where it happened and an employee noticed what happened and rushed over to offer a bag of ice. This also caught the attention of a Walmart manager standing up front, and she was extremely worried that we were going to file a lawsuit. My mom was like, "Why would I do that?" She ended up having to take me to the hospital to get my wound glued together and butterfly bandages. It honestly wasn't that bad of a wound, it just bled a lot because head wounds usually do. But 20 years later and I still have a scar a little over an inch long going into my hairline. Sorry to drop a tragic story, but here goes. It wasn't me, but someone who worked right across the hall from. They had a bed at window height. Young baby was on the bed and then the window was open. He turned away for a second to address his other kid. Baby is missing. Baby fell 2 or 3 stories out the window and died in impact. Needless to say, the dad took quite a bit of time off work after that and wasn't the same after. I didn't even know how to talk to him anymore, it that we were ever closer, but it's always at the forefront of your mind even when making small talk. When I was 5, my friend that lived a few doors down went on holiday with his parents. They were staying on a resort that had a cabaret, entertainment bar. His parents went up to do a karaoke duet one evening and left him with the group of friends they had made whilst on holiday. In the time they were singing the song, he'd wandered off. They found him 10 minutes later in the resort pool, drowned. It was ages before my mum told me the true story. She initially just said that he had to go live with some relatives to be near his new school. Edit. Thank you for all the kind words. That was almost 40 years ago, and I've not thought much about since my mum told me the truth. But, thinking back, I can remember my mum being really insistent that me and brother learn to swim, and she has paid for all the swimming lessons for my 4 kids, now all teens and excellent swimmers. It appears it certainly affected my mum much more than me. When I was maybe 7, my friend and I were watching a small TV that was on top of a dresser in her parents' room. She was always really anxious about using the TV, and eventually she told me why. When my friend's cousin was about 4, she opened some drawers in her parents' dresser to climb up, as kids sometimes do. The dresser fell over and crushed the cousin, killing her. That always stuck with me as a child. This is why anchoring furniture to the wall should be part of baby-proofing. I've done it, and the only hard part is finding a wall stud. I think it's good to share stories like that one. So many children die because they get into mischief when an adult looks away for a moment. If the parents affected realized how common it is, it might make continuing life afterward slightly easier. A friend I've known since the 7th grade had a toddler drown in a 5-gallon bucket. Before that, she was a picture-perfect suburban housewife, happy as a lark. Wound up running off to Alaska and living in a remote cabin for a few years, then she came back to the lower 48 and seemed to be doing better, but then joined a cult and cut herself off from her family. At age 48, she has recently emerged from the cult and rejoined her family, but her sister tells me that she could fall off the ledge again at any moment. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to be the first to know about Red Rabbit Reader's new videos. If you like our videos, please like them on YouTube and share them with your friends. We welcome your comments below. Press to start another of our videos.